Hi YouTube! Today I'm talking about a comic called Bingo Love, specifically Bingo Love Volume 1 Jackpot Edition. Bingo Love itself was written by T. Franklin, who you might recognize from the Harley Quinn Eat, Bang, Kill tour from DC Comics. It's based on the Harley Quinn cartoon, and I picked it up initially and haven't gotten it since. It's not that I dislike the comic, it's just that I kind of forgot about it, but I did enjoy some of the first couple issues that I read when it initially was released. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. Franklin actually originally got started with Bingo Love when she raised about $60,000 for it via Kickstarter. Nowadays, crowdfunding is a pretty common way for independent comic artists to kick off their comic career, but it wasn't that long ago that crowdfunding was new, so it's super cool that she was able to get funded, especially with such a unique story that she wanted to tell. I've had Bingo Love on my to-be-read list for a long time. I saw it at my local comic book shop a while ago and decided it was time to check it off my list. Turned out there was some stuff that I liked and some stuff that I didn't really like, and I'm going to break it down for you as best that I can. But first I want to say two things. There are some trigger warnings for the book, and I'll try to put it up on screen now. The story is rated teen for a reason and deals with different topics that may not be suitable for everyone, so please keep in mind that I have other stuff that's suited for all ages, but please click away if this is not something that you feel comfortable with. I totally understand. Similarly but different, this book was created by a woman of color and speaks about topics that I won't necessarily be able to relate to or fully understand. I can only view comics from my own perspective and opinion, so I'd love to hear what other people have to say, especially people who have lived experiences that may be represented in the comic. Also, full spoilers ahead. With that said, let's get into it.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Bingo Love follows Hazel Johnson and Marie or Mary McKay. I'm gonna say Marie. It might be Mary. I apologize if it's Mary. These girls met in 1963 after Marie was sent to live with her grandmother. When Hazel first sees Marie at Bingo, she immediately falls in love with her. Both girls become friends instantly, and Hazel also continues to crush pretty hard on Marie. We follow the girls as they grow up together before ultimately confessing their feelings for each other. This moment is fleeting though, as they're soon torn apart by their families.
Any feeling?
Daddy, I love him!
No.
And forced back into the expectations and roles upheld by their families. Skip forward 50 years and Hazel and Marie end up both marrying men, having children, and living in relative discontent. We follow Hazel throughout this time, seeing that she's happy enough with her children and as a homemaker. She's also content with her marriage as much as she can be, but there isn't any type of romantic love between her and her husband. This isn't to say she dislikes him, there's just like an emptiness or a void in their relationship where for her Marie would be. Then at a Mother's Day bingo event, Hazel and Marie are reunited, much in the same way that they initially met in their youth. The girls are instantly smitten with each other again and spend much of the remainder of the book rekindling their romance, taking steps to end their existing marriages, and ultimately end up spending the second half of their lives together. This includes working hard to reaffirm their family ties, come to terms with their past trauma, and find ways to fulfill themselves and each other. This culminates in a pretty emotional ending in which Marie begins to lose herself and her memories from some unspecified disease. Hazel continues to care for Marie, and the two ultimately pass away together, Marie from her illness and Hazel from a broken heart. I'd like to end this video on positives, so I'm starting with what I didn't really like. This is almost entirely my perspective and biases though, so while there are elements that I didn't like, they aren't necessarily something that you wouldn't like. My biggest complaint with Bingo Love is the numerous cheating elements in the story.
Is it ever okay to cheat?
Oh, wow.
Fucking no!
I have a pretty low tolerance for cheating, even when it's fictional. While I do really like Marie and Hazel's relationship and enjoyed watching them get together, it's just something that makes me uncomfortable. I have a zero tolerance policy in general for that sort of thing, even in media, and I may have been less apt to actually buy the comic if I knew that it was such a large part of the story. That's probably too dramatic, but it's just how I feel. Additionally, we learned that Hazel's husband had actually been cheating on Hazel for years with a man he met in the army, which is also horrible, and while I'd like to think this is a commentary on the fact that both gay men and women were marginalized and forced to hide who they were for much of history, there's also a cynic in me that thinks that is a great way to make us think that he was cheating on her first. We should dislike him as an excuse for Hazel and Marie getting back together before they fully began splitting with their husbands. I'm not saying to ignore that, I'm saying that both are bad. There are a few other smaller problems I had with the story. Like, I was a bit confused on how long sections of the book are meant to take place in, with some points containing notes on the specific year, while others feel a bit more vague. Additionally, the writing of Bingo Love, at least to me, is very dated. When reading this, I remember feeling like, wow, this is so 2018. Then checking the inside cover, and sure enough, it was written in 2018. This isn't to say that the writing is bad, but I think it is distinctly from that time. So it's not really my taste anymore. I bring this up too much on my channel, but I spent a good amount of time on Tumblr in my formative years and can say with confidence that in high school, I would have absolutely devoured this comic. Nowadays, it's a bit cringy, but it also gives me a weird sense of nostalgia whenever I see this kind of tone or style of writing.
You can put that away. I don't touch the gays. I have standards.
Yeah? How's that working out for you?
If you didn't have that experience, it might not even register with you. I feel like that's hard to say. It sounds very internet in 2018, but I don't think that's a negative thing.
Wow.
Is something wrong?
Oh, just the way you said that. So straightforward. Not a hint of irony.
On an entirely art-related note, I do think that some of the colors look a bit too dark on some pages or otherwise seem a bit off or washed out. I personally really think it was the physical printer that was the issue though, since when looking at the comic online, the specific pages have looked fine. I can say from experience that the way colors look digitally doesn't always correlate to the printed media. The art in the comic itself was nice to me. It's a nice looking comic, I wish it was printed better. That's a couple of thoughts on the negatives. I feel like I'd have more to say if I reread it, but my goal is never to tear these comics apart. If I ever really don't like something or dislike it, I probably wouldn't make a video on it. Anyway, what did I like about Bingo Love? I really like that the story follows older women as characters. I've said it once and I'll say it again, but I get a little tired of reading about teenagers and 20-somethings, and it's nice to see characters my age and older. While a good chunk of the book does follow the girls in their youth, the most memorable parts, at least in my opinion, take place in the second half of the book after they're back together. I really like the tone of the book. It establishes a lot of heavy topics pretty well, particularly in the interpersonal relationships of the comics characters. I've mentioned that I didn't really like the cheating, and that's 100% true, but I do like the message Bingo Love is trying to present, or at least I feel like it's trying to present, on the influence of the status quo and the restrictions that it has on us. Many people convince themselves that they'll be happy if they check off society's boxes and play their parts as a means to living up to some superfluous fictional idea. If you're a young adult, you should be married with kids, then you'll be happy, or you should be successful in your career, and then you'll be happy. But when you get there and you feel empty because it wasn't what you really wanted, it's just what you told yourself that you wanted, and you don't know what to do after that, and you're stuck in this situation.
I mean, what if I don't want to live the way you live?
Oh, don't be ridiculous, Andrea. Everybody wants this. Everybody wants to be us.
I think it's really an important idea to present to young people, because the worst feeling is being trapped in your unhappiness and feeling like there's no way out, because you feel like you have allowed yourself to get cornered when in fact it's just the world pushing you in that corner, if that makes sense. It's a very sweet idea. I'm happy that the characters end up happy, and I think that it's a nice message overall. I also really liked the art in Bingo Love. I mentioned earlier that I don't think my edition was printed very well, but I don't blame that on the artist or the colorist. The art is lively and fun with rich colors and expressionate characters. Similarly to the writing, I do think this style was particularly popular around the mid-2000s, 2018, but I think it's still very much in style now, particularly with the indie comic creators. I'm a big fan of this art and have definitely tried and failed to emulate a similar style in my own stuff. You'll probably never hear me talk about it in length, but I have tried making webtoons before, but you can find a couple of failed projects because I'm not a writer, if you can't tell from my scripts. Last thing I want to mention is specific to the Jackpot edition. There are additional vignettes after the original comic ends. These follow snippets of time with Hazel and Marie's life, and I think it works really well to further flesh out the story and their relationship. Each is done by a different author and artist. We also get a story focused on Hazel's husband and the man he was cheating on Hazel with, which is nice in order to give us more context and a perspective on what he was going through. I think Bingo Love will either be something that you really like or something that you're kind of meh about. There was clearly a lot of passion in the project from the creator, and it's a nice, unique comic overall. I don't think that this comic has a lot of rereadability for me personally, but I think it's going to sit on my shelf until I find someone to give it to, or maybe donate it to my local library. I can see this comic meaning something for people. Unfortunately for me, it's just kind of meh. Not every comic is for everyone, and while I don't think this is for me, that's okay. Have you read Bingo Love? You might have, since it came out in 2018. I'm not kidding when I say that this has been on my to be read list for a long time. Let me know what you thought, if you've read it, or if you're interested in checking it out. I have a few other comics that are in the queue, but I might post another poll or whatever just to try to come up with ideas. I'm afraid that I'm gonna get really inconsistent with posting, so I'm always looking for what people are interested in hearing me totally just gab about. But yeah, same old, same old. Have a good night, YouTube.